Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Webinar Wednesday. I'd love, love, love having this opportunity to talk with you, whether you're watching this as a replay or whether you're joining us live, or if you just came back and wanted to check out something we talked about. These sessions are really a great way for me to interact with really a wider community than maybe my traditional customers and clients, and be able to provide advice, to be able to provide insight, and to also really make sure that if there's something new I'm seeing or something that I'm seeing as far as trends, I can get that information out there. So if you're watching this on our broadcast, please, please, please use the comment feature there. I will be checking back and forth just to make sure that I'm not missing anything. And if you're in my Zoom call, I'm so excited to see everyone kind of pouring in there. So if you have any questions while I'm presenting, any questions while I'm talking about a topic, please let me know. Just put it in the chat. I will constantly, you'll see my eyes drift over there, and I will make sure I try to answer those questions. Or if it's something that I want to do a screen share or show you in a little bit more in depth, I will do that as well. All right, so let's get started. Let's get these slides up on the screen and walk you through some stuff we have to cover for today. So as we talk about today, we're talking about lighting the flame, and we're also talking about keeping it steady. Now, the challenge with bringing those two topics together is some of you may be looking for new business advice, and some of you may be saying, well, how do I take my existing business and make it better, make it stronger? We're going to cover both. And I am going to ask just one quick check-in, because depending on how many people we have here that are new versus existing businesses, I can cater my responses that direction. So let me know in the comments, especially my folks in Zoom. Let me know just quickly if you are new, so meaning you're thinking of starting a business, versus if you already have an existing business. And really what you're hoping today, I can talk about how you can either reestablish it, expand it, maybe you had a business and you had to put it down for a minute and you want to reignite it. You can say that as well. But that allows me to make sure that I am covering everyone's bases. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yep. I see a couple of just starting. I see a couple of existing. Okay. All right. So we're going to jump around a little bit, but as always, ask me questions. If this is the first time you're coming to one of my webinars, welcome, welcome. I love, love, love doing these. I have such a huge passion for marketing and business and structure and all this stuff. I just love it, love it, love it. And I love to be able to do it in our space, in our community, to really be able to help vegans build businesses that really are an extension of their ethics, an extension of the kind of vegan dream, an extension of us really trying to do better in this world we're in. So when I talk about ideas and recommendations, yes, there's a ton of ways you can do things, but I'm always going to try to make sure that I'm giving you recommendations that will work in line with what your goals are with your business, especially since many of us are building these businesses to create a better and greater future. Now, let's talk about types of businesses. Now, for some of you who are existing, you're like, okay, Stephanie, I already got this down. I already know what I'm doing. But for some of you out there, you might be retooling. You might be maybe thinking about new ideas or expansion. And one thing I always love to do when I do these sessions is to ground in the types of vegan businesses that you can grow. One thing I like to do is sometimes, this may just be a little reminder for some of you out there, is that obviously any business can be a vegan business. It's really, at least in my mind and my definition, it's the person that leads the organization. So even if you run a yoga studio, it's a vegan business because you're going to make sure the food is vegan in there. You're going to make sure that every aspect of what you use is going to be vegan. So what happens is you get to kind of pull that methodology through and through. It doesn't have to be a food-based business for it to be your true vegan passion. And I say that for anyone out there who's trying to get started and trying to figure it out, because what can happen at times as vegans is we can feel like we have to go into a certain box, especially if you're a vegan that's saying, I want to save animals. And what can happen is some of us who are maybe not as food inclined figure we should go into those areas because that's where we can create the greatest amount of, help. But the reality is you can save animals in all industries. You can help with climate change in all industries, because often it's our kind of process of how things are done is what's impacting the world. So therefore, don't allow yourself to feel like you have to go into like this bucket or that bucket to be able to achieve what you want to do. You can do it with the skills that you have, with the services that you offer. And that's why on this page, you're going to see me kind of give you three different options. For many people, they like product based businesses, physical, tangible products. Like they want to sell vegan skincare, they want to sell jewelry, they want to sell, maybe you're doing farmers markets and you are making your, infamous vegan pie. Those items are going to be more on that product side. But for many of you, there may be services and things that you do. And you could be a vegan hairdresser. You can be a vegan accountant. You can be a vegan coach. You can be a vegan tattoo artist. I bring that up because I want to make sure for many of you, you're exploring a wide enough space when you're thinking about your business. And then the other thing you can do is you can do a combination. Now, this is great for people who are new, but this is also good for many of you who are out there thinking about what could I do next? Maybe you've started and you're a cooking class instructor. Maybe you're a coach right now. Maybe you have a podcast. And the idea is that you have started your business. You've started this dream, but you're trying to now kind of turn it more into a bigger business, turn it into something that allows for more expansion. And what that often will mean is some type of combination of services or combination of product and services. So I just want to mention that because you can create or have a product that you sell and also sell services. You can sell vegan makeup and sell services to help people use, apply, and give them professional services, even like makeovers and things like that, with the products that you sell. So don't always think about everything in maybe kind of a is this, isn't that. There is that opportunity for combination. And that's where things like memberships, recipe clubs, subscription programs, and so forth come from. Now, if you need help today on defining that business, let me know in the comments because I can definitely give you any recommendations if you want to go into that. But as a general rule, when you know the kind of business you're going to do, a product-based business, service-based business, or from an expansion standpoint, you're going to add a service or do some type of combination, what we need to start to do is understand where you are today. For us to do that long-term success really starts with an assessment. Now, I bring this up because for a lot of people, they think about writing a business plan. They think about, really kind of going into the weeds and the details of research and so forth. And that stuff's important. Don't get me wrong. You need to know your competition. You need to know what pricing offers out there. We need to know all that information. But before you know what your next step is, my recommendation would be to figure out where you are. The reason I say that is because in running a business, it's kind of like a process. It's kind of like these stages that you're going through. And for many of you, you might be thinking about your business for a while. You might have dabbled into your business a little bit and then had to stop because something happened, change in family and so forth. Or some of you, especially who have established businesses, you really need to know where you are today so that we know where you're going. Because if we don't do an assessment and understand where you are now, it's hard to judge where you could be. All right. So now assessment, I know it sounds kind of technical. It does mean it's going to be some work, but I really think you're going to appreciate this recommendation as you move forward. So here's what I'm going to ask you to do. After this webinar, I'm going to ask you to do an assessment. This is an example of one of the assessments that I often offer to people in my courses. I created kind of a more generic one because I do different ones depending on the course that someone's in. But what I want you to do is I want you to figure out where are you today in your business. And I know for some of you, you might be like, well, I'm just getting started. That may be the case, but I talked to even someone today who's getting started, and some of these things they have and some of the things they don't have. And by sitting down and doing this assessment, you can identify a quick gap analysis. You can figure out, oh, I do know these things, but I don't know these things. So this is where I can focus my time. Now, I love these things because this is how I really help people when I coach them one-on-one build a business. I go through these steps and we talk about not only where they are today and where they want to be, but then we build a plan to help them get from where they are today to where they want to be. So, the number one thing you want to do is you got to get a good handle on your revenue and income. Now, for a lot of people, they'll either have a sense of their revenue, but not their income because they don't understand really their expenses. They just kind of know what's in the bank account. The other thing is, I want you to start thinking about those numbers on a monthly basis. What happens for many of us in our business is we're just trying to get stuff going. We're trying to get some sales. We're trying to make customers happy. We're trying to do social media. We're trying to do email. And we're trying to do stuff. But what happens is we don't get a sense of how our business and the health of our business is going. And to know the health of your business, we need a consistent metric to look at on a consistent basis. Could you look at something greater than a month? Absolutely. But this is, I find, a great place to start. So I'm curious in the comments, how many people, you don't have to share it, but how many people know their monthly revenue and their monthly income? You can just let me know, yep, Stephanie, yes, I have it, or no, I got some work to do. Because I just always want to gauge and figure out where people are. Oh, perfect. All right. Got a good amount of yeses. Oh, I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Okay. Now, a good thing came up here. Yeah, I know what you mean. I always need to grow my stuff too. So here's one thing that came up. There's a question about accessibility. And here's the thing I want to recommend or talk about in that. We can talk a little bit more detail about it. But your revenue has to be based on people who can afford your services. Running a business for people who cannot afford your services will not give you long-term success. Now, that doesn't mean you can't still help people. What I often tell people is you have to build two kind of different playbooks in a sense. You have to figure out who are the people that you can help that can afford your cooking classes, your coaching, your programs. Because those people are out there, those people who are willing to invest, and let them invest. Then what you do is you figure out what we call our give back strategy. And this is the option I have here at the bottom of the page. We'll talk about this even more as we go through the slides. But when you're trying to make sure that certain communities have access to your content, when you're trying to make sure that individuals are able to come into your programs, you build in a give back strategy that allows other people who maybe cannot afford your services to participate. That's when you create scholarship programs. That's where you create free talks. And the idea is the revenue that's coming in from people who can afford your business can help you support and maintain those either free classes or maybe you subsidize them so you cover half of the cost. But you will be only able to do that in the long term if you're willing to make sure you work with customers who can afford your services too. So that's going to be one key and one thing I want everyone to think about because I struggle with it too. Like I want to do, I mean, honestly, I'd love to do all this stuff for free, just teach and teach and teach and teach and teach. But the reality is in the environment we live in, we have mortgages, we got light bills, we got stuff we have to pay for. So we want to build a business that can sustain. Plus, you want a business that can generate revenue because it allows you to hire other vegans. It allows you to donate to nonprofits. It puts you in a different position to enable the growth and change you want in the world. Okay? All right. The other thing I want to mention is status. Whether you're transitioning now, transitioning in the future, we always want to do an assessment of where are you truly today? Because for a lot of people, we're like, I'm working really hard. And I know you're working hard, but I need to know, is that really nights and weekends? Is that part-time? And therefore, in 6 months, 12 months from now, where do you want to be? Are you trying to go from part-time to full-time? Are you trying to go from nights and weekends to part-time? The reason I say that is when you don't do the assessment and then pick what your destination is going to be 6 or 12 months from now, you feel like they're on this like endless road. We don't know when we got into a level of accomplishment because you didn't create a milestone for you to know I made it to that next stage. So what I want you to do is not just think about milestones financially, but think about it from a status standpoint, especially my newbies out there. And the idea is that you don't have to always jump from starting a business to going full time. I highly recommend doing your business while you're still working so that your financials and everything are covered. And then you grow your business over time. So, therefore, the decisions you make are based on the success of your business to move out of a full time position. The other thing I want you to start thinking about is what are the number of products that you need to sell in a year? Because if we have that revenue target, we can always have numbers. But the question is, how do you get there? Do you need 100 people? Do you need 50 people? Do you need 10 people? Because depending on your product or service, those numbers are going to be totally different. And until you get a handle on that, sometimes, once again, it'll feel like you're just moving forward and marketing, marketing, and marketing. But the idea is if you know how many you need in a year, 3 months from now, you'll know if you're 25% of the way there. You'll know if you're 50% of the way there, and then you can make adjustments. I also want you to think about your marketing channels. What kind of performance are you having? Now, for some of you, you're like, Steph, I told you I just getting started. Well, maybe you started your social media account and you haven't been selling that many products yet, so you don't have a lot of revenue. But if you're seeing that you're getting good traffic, you see you're getting good reach, I want you to document that because we want to know where you are today in that. And then we can start to assess where do you want to be in the future. The other thing is infrastructure. Now, this one, most people don't love when I bring up infrastructure. So if you're over there, kind of giving me some side eye, I completely understand and appreciate that. But infrastructure is one of those key things that can really make a difference in a business. Because for many of us, it's the repeat work that we're doing in our business. Every time we have a cooking class, we write all the emails. Every time we have a cooking class, we write a new description. Every time we do stuff, we start from a blank sheet of paper and write it over. But if you're a coach and you create a package, you're a coach, you create your contracts. If you're a coach and you create your marketing material, often you'll be able to leverage it and be able to use it over and over and over. So that first time you created it, maybe took you 2.5 hours. If you leverage it and create it in a way that's leverageable, maybe the next time it's only going to take you an hour. Then time after that, 45 minutes. Then you'll ultimately get it down to a 30-minute process for you to be able to sign up someone and get someone booked as a coach. All right. The other thing is I'm all about the numbers, all about the revenue, but I'm also about the balance and self-care. And when you're thinking about your plan for your business and your assessment for your business, I want you to think about that as well. I want you to think about, are you just feeling overworked already? Do you feel like you need a vacation? Because the argument would be, do you want your business to generate enough revenue so you can go on vacation? Do you want your business to give you more flexibility so that you can learn new skills? Are you focused on self-care? And if you're not, let's make sure we build a plan that allows you to take better care of yourself. So you're not a great entrepreneur that's like 2 steps from burning out. All right. Now, what do you guys think of this assessment? You can let me know. Feel scary? Does it feel like, oh, I might be able to do this? And like I said, I'm going to show you kind of an example. I'm going to actually use a cooking class example of this because I knew we'd probably have a couple of cooking instructors on the line today. So I wanted to provide it. Yes. Oh, Sandra, great point. This is definitely something you want to retool and keep looking at. So I'm glad you said that about doing it on a quarterly basis. But this applies for everyone. Product-based business, service-based business. This applies if you're just getting started. And this is really, really key when you've been in business for a while. So what I want you to do is build a document like this. I want you to say, where am I currently and where am I going to be? Now, for a lot of people, they always ask me, where should I look? I don't want you to look 3 and 5 years from now, way too far in the future. I want you to feel the impact of this change. So what I often tell people is 12 months is my ideal destination that I want you to walk towards. I want you to be able to say, okay, if this is where I am now, this time next year, I could be here. Now, for some of you, you're like, 12 months is still a little far out for me, Stephanie. Then do 6 months. But one of those 2 numbers is where I want you to kind of hang out, because by hanging out there, you'll be able to say, okay, I made $1,500 total so far. I did a couple cooking classes. I did a couple events. Maybe I did a couple speaking event engagements and got paid for it. Maybe I sold a program. Maybe you have a podcast and you've had a couple of people pay for advertisement. And that's great. You've made about $1,500 total. We're going to put that on the board. But what I want you to do is turn around and say, okay, 6 months from now, what should my monthly revenue be? And the reason I want you to do this side by side comparison is I don't want you to say I'm going from $1,500 total to 10,000 per month. Yeah, I don't want to dampen anyone's dreams. I would love for you to be at those numbers. But remember, I want you to make stepping stones, and I want this destination to feel tangible, feel within reach. And I'd rather you put a goal in here of 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and hit that goal and hit it sooner than you to put a number out there that feels intimidating. I want you to reach your goals, get to your destination. It's kind of like driving. I want you to literally drive there. Yes, 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 yes. Let's talk a little bit about nonprofit. Yes, 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 yes. Now, just because you're a nonprofit doesn't mean you don't have to generate revenue. It's just called something different in a nonprofit. In nonprofit, most of the time, it's fundraising. So, what I want you to do is just change these words around. I want you to see this differently because for many nonprofits, the success of their kind of long term vision and what they're able to do will be based on their ability to fundraise. Now, fundraising doesn't work exactly the same way as revenue, meaning it's hard to say, I'm going to fundraise or bring in X amount per month. It's a little bit more challenging to kind of say that monthly number. What I find for nonprofits, a better number is probably quarterly, but you should have fundraising goals each quarter. The reason being is when we put things at like that yearly or annual kind of number, it can feel too far away. And then we don't make corrections throughout the year if we see a number lower than expected. So I definitely want you to do the same thing. I also want you to just kind of change this around. I don't have a slide specifically for nonprofit, but we can talk through this a little bit. Is you want to just flip these things around. So when we talk about status, this is the same question. Are you part-time, full-time? Same applies for nonprofit. Now, number of products, number of services sold, it really depends on the measurement of your nonprofit. For some nonprofits, they're giving out food. So it's a number of meals delivered. That's going to be your goal because it's not just to have the money for the meals, there's the distribution, getting them to people, and so forth. So, whatever your objective is, we want to still break that down into a metric so that you can measure it for your nonprofit. And then the same thing, we want to look at things like diversity. We want to look at, are you offering different types of programs, different types of support? Whether you're doing free classes as part of your nonprofit, and therefore you're looking at number of participants or number of people in your classes, what we always want to do is have some metrics to be able to assess where you are and where you're headed in your nonprofit. Let me know if that answers your question as well. Okay. All right. So everyone feel like they have a little bit of homework to do? Not a ton, because some of the stuff you probably have, but I definitely want you to make sure you know where you are and where you're going. And one other thing I want to mention in here is I want you to make sure you have clarity on your offerings. Because what happens for many of us in our businesses is we just want to help people. And the offering sounds like help as opposed to clearly what is someone acquiring? What is someone paying for? And what I want to make sure that you're doing or considering is what actual items are you selling? And when we talk about current state versus destination, what needs to be built? Do you need to build new packages? If you're a cooking class instructor, do you need to build a class schedule? If you are working on a subscription, meaning you sell products, let's use the skincare example, you sell vegan skincare and you're trying to move into a subscription product, that's where your destination is. You have your existing product now, and this is where you're going before. Ah, yes, definitely. And we'll talk about that. Actually, I'm gonna hold tight. We're gonna hang on to that topic or that point right there, Katarina, because that is definitely something we need to talk about. Katarina put a comment in here, and this happens for a lot of us, where we're paying for everything and we're gonna offer free because we want to help. One thing I think is so important is that we do understand where does either revenue or fundraising come from, because we have to identify that to cover our expenses. We have to be able to cover that. And for a nonprofit, many nonprofits are bringing in enough donations so that it covers their expenses, but they also have money for expansion and growth. So when you're thinking about nonprofit, it's not necessarily that you're trying to just run down the clock and spend. Once you do fundraising, you spend, spend, spend. What growth means for a nonprofit is to be able to consistently be able to secure those funds and be able to pour those funds into new opportunities, new reach, or new capabilities for your nonprofit. And all of that means that you have to have a delta between what you bring in and what you pay out. Now, a lot of times I find one way to help with those numbers, because not all of us love the numbers. Numbers weren't my friends for a while until I did some like financial auditing. And then I was like, oh, okay, I get how to make the numbers work for me. Is I want you to think about, what is your revenue goal? Like, where do you need to be? Because for many of us, when we think about businesses, and especially I think it's kind of tricky sometimes. Like you read these stories or like a video pops up on YouTube and people are like, I made all this money per year. And, I'm going 6 figures, 5 figures, 7 figures, you're getting all those numbers. And while, as always, I really want the biggest success for everyone, we have to ground ourselves in reality. Because if you're working a full-time job, it's very difficult to be able to run 6 figure business at the same time. Could you do it? Absolutely. But where do you want to start? And what happens is those videos are showing you closer to the finish line, or they're showing you 6 months, 12 months from where you are today. And when I tell a lot of people to ground themselves, to feel something tangible, is to decide, what kind of revenue expansion are you looking for? If you have a current business, are you trying to bring in another 20,000, another 50,000, another 100,000? If you're switching over from from full-time work to entrepreneur, are we replacing an income? Are you trying to make what you made in your other job? And if that's the case, you have a different trajectory. And because we're doing a replacement strategy, what you have to do is, when you're thinking about when you let go of your full-time job, your business has to be on the trajectory to replace. What many people do is they quit their job too early when their business is only on a trajectory for 25,000, let's say, for example. And then they're like, well, I'm going to quit because I can make more. Your business has to be on the trajectory. You have to be able to say, the reason I need to let go of this job is because I have so many prospects, customers. I have a pipeline of customers that would get me to 70. And if I had more time to focus on customers, and I mean a pipeline, we'll talk a little bit about that in a few minutes. What happens is, this puts you in a position so that when you make that switch, you're on the road to success, as opposed to on the road to 25, and then you have this $50,000 gap that we don't have a solution for yet. The other thing is, some of you are just getting started. Some of you are like, I just want to see if it works. I just want to see how it goes. And therefore, if you're just getting started, give yourself a modest goal. Start with 20,000 and build a business that generates 20. Because if you can generate 20,000, you'll be able to generate 50. You'll be able to generate those other numbers. You don't have to start with 6 figures to help yourself get to success. All right. Now, let's talk about infrastructure. Oh, I'm looking at time. I'm running out. So I'm going to run through these a little bit faster, because I do want to make sure that everyone who's in my Zoom session, I answer all of your questions. So we talked a little about starting a business. We talked a little bit about what we need to put in place to get that foundation. We talked about the assessment. But when you do the assessment, you're going to identify some areas of gaps. You're going to identify some areas that you should focus on. Or you might be saying, well, Steph, I'll get to the assessment, but can you just tell me, like, what do successful businesses do? Like, what are some of the quick things? And I wanted to give you about 4 or 5 quick things that successful businesses do, so that if you're looking for a quick hit action item, these would be some of them. Number 1, infrastructure. Infrastructure is not sexy, not exciting. It doesn't sound like the thing that you're going to do a TikTok or a Instagram reel on, but it makes a huge difference. When you're running a business, you have to have the systems in place to create an ease around day-to-day management. So if you're already in business, running your business, and you're finding you have a time management issue, Often that means you don't have the best infrastructure in place. You're creating a lot of rework. And what happens is if you're spending time on rework, you can't facilitate growth. So look at your processes like invoicing, onboarding, contracts, kickoff calls, communication, anything, confirmation emails, follow up, service, and see what you can put in place so you can turn things into templates. What can you do to turn things into documents that are repeatable? And then ultimately getting to things like automation. Just curious in the comments, how many of you feel like, Steph, I got a little bit of work to do around infrastructure because running my business day to day is too stressful, or I'm dealing with fire drills all the time, or I don't have enough time to get my basic stuff done or my standard stuff like following up with emails or sending people proposals. If you're feeling like you're behind on those things, we've identified an area for you to focus on. And this is where you can get some of that growth. Okay. The other thing is support system. This one isn't a hard one to put in place, but successful businesses have some type of support system in place. Because as an entrepreneur, often we try to do it all on our own. We try to shoulder it all. We try to push through it all. And yes, there's a lot that we do need some strength to move forward, even when it looks like the odds are against us. But you also need a confidant. You often will need a peer community or a mentor or coach. You need someone that you can talk to at times when you have a good day, but you also need someone to talk to you when you have a great day. Because what can happen is in your business, you're like inside this void that no one else can often see inside. So when great things happen, it's hard for people to celebrate with you because they don't know what it took for you to get that client or to have a sold out class or to reach a new revenue goal or to sell more books than you ever thought you could or to hit the bestseller list or whatever those accomplishments are. And it's so, so important that you have somebody who understands your world and can appreciate what you're doing. So if you don't have a support system in place, find someone. Now, you don't need all of these in place. Ideally, you'll work through getting some of these in place, but start with joining a peer community, have someone that you can call, even if it's to vent to, or getting a mentor and coach. I'm just curious in the comments, how many people have a support system in place? Or is this the right nudge to remind you to get someone or have somebody that you can call in the good and in the troubled times? Oh, Sam, good to hear. Say yes. Okay. Perfect. Oh, now one person brought up referrals. Referrals are key. A lot of times when people think of referrals or think of word of mouth, you don't need as much infrastructure, but you actually need more. The reason being is because when someone refers you, you want that customer's experience, the person who was referred to have an amazing experience. Because if they don't have an amazing experience in the first 2 or 3 times they interact with you, they're going back to the other person and going to be like, well, they didn't call me back, or they didn't respond, or I thought it was this. And what happens is you want not only this person to have a great experience, you don't want any of that negative feedback to go back to someone who's an existing or current customer. So therefore, referrals are really key in setting up a process. So when someone does refer, how do you set that up? How do you know who refers? How do you make sure you thank people who are referring business to you? If someone's referred, what is your process? How do you talk to them and maybe walk them through a slightly different onboarding process or prospecting process? Because what can happen is when someone's referred, you're not going to send them to like the website and be like, oh, go sign up for my discovery call, or oh, go do this. You may bring them into the process a little bit differently. So it's very key that you actually have a referral process in place. So I just wanted to mention that because that's one thing that we've been doing lately for a lot of our other clients. The other thing is profitability around your offers. Now, we hinted on this and talked about this a little bit when we talked about the overall revenue. But what I also want to make sure is that when you're building a business, that sustainable success often comes from 2 to 3 things happening. Number one, knowing your cost or your expenses and being able to reduce them over time. So, one thing that you want to start to do, if you're seeing that profitability is one of your challenges, is you want to start documenting what your expenses are. I find the easiest way for me to do it is I pay for everything with one credit card. So, I use my American Express card for every single thing. And for that American Express card, all of my charges are in there. So, therefore, at the end of a month, end of a quarter, and obviously at the end of the year, I can quickly look at it and say, hey, these are all of my costs, and I can get a sense of where I'm spending my money. Then I can go back and say, okay, let me make adjustments. Now, it's kind of late at the end of the year. So, what I tend to do now is I do it on a quarterly basis so I can make adjustments. All right. But the first step in that is just being consistent in your processing. And I tell a lot of people, I actually talked to someone today and I was telling them how important it is to have a like business credit card so you don't have like all these like cash receipts laying around. The other thing is you need a high end offer. Now, for a lot of people, it feels counterintuitive, especially when you're trying to, help a community. But for many businesses to grow, they need an offer for people who can afford to pay more because they want more either one on one support, they want more um, ways for them to get maybe where they want to go faster, especially if you're a coach. And often that means you're going to have a higher end offering. Now, that higher end offering doesn't mean you're going to offer it to everyone. It doesn't mean everyone in the world. You may sell two of them, three of them in a year. But what I find is having that offer in place will often give you a higher revenue target for you to hit and give you an option when someone says, I want more the concierge version of what you offer, you will have something in place for them. And then the last thing is move to longer term commitments. Often, when people are building their business, they will sell one consult, sell one class, they'll sell one workshop. What I want you to do is start looking in your business and see if there's an opportunity to either bundle things together so people can get a course, they can get a book, and they can get a workshop, or you can actually sell people multiple items. You can work with people instead of one on one consults, you work with them in a 3 month coaching program, 6 month coaching program. Did I skip three? Oh, it's my numbers. They are off. Good catch. Yeah, this one should be number three and this one's number four. Sorry about that. Sorry about that typo. Um, I'll fix that on the final. So you think about what that commitment would be for your business and how can you get people to not only commit to a longer period of time of working with you, because it's not just about the profit, it's about the impact that you can make. When you do a one-on-one session with someone for an hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours, you can only sometimes take them but so far. But if you can work with them over 3 months, often they'll get better results. And those better results will either have them come back for more or create a referral based business for you because they will be so happy with the results. So think about those longer commitments. And that's one of the things that I probably changed in my business about 4 years ago. And that really took us to a whole different level because then I started to build a stronger relationship with people I coached and people I worked with because it wasn't just not only, hey, we got one consult, two consults. And then I was constantly talking about invoicing. Okay, do you want me to invoice you? I'll invoice you for this week and then next week. And then do you want me to do two of them? And what happens is I was always in administrative mode because I was constantly going from one session to another session or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 sessions. And once I was able to kind of move people to a 3 month, first I started with 3 months, then I went to 6 month coaching packages. What happens is I could do some automation. I could put them into a 6 month contract. That 6 month contract, I use software now. So that when someone signs up for a 6 month contract, every month they get a reminder that, hey, this is the balance due for the next month. And now I'm out of that day to day stuff that used to be, send this invoice, send that invoice. I'd software be able to do it for me. And then I could focus on helping them. So think about that in your business. Think about how you can do that because that can make a big difference. The other thing is, and this is the true number four, I want you to know your audience. This is a big, big thing. People talk about this a lot of times in marketing. And for many of us, we're like, I think I know what you mean, but I want to give you a different perspective on this. And here's why. When we think we know our customer, we sometimes build a product or service for who we think they are. Or we build this product or service that's kind of like plain vanilla. It's like for everyone. And what happens is people can't see themselves in your product. They can't see that they are the right person. So, what I want you to do, whether you think you do know or if you think there is a gap here, I want you to start spending more time with your customers. And what that means is hosting things like focus groups. And I'll talk about that in a little bit in the next slide. I want you to start developing an FAQ. You should know the top 10 questions that your customers ask you about your product or service and how you can help them. The other thing I want you to think about are what are the problems you solve for your customers? You should be able to articulate that. Like if I had somebody, and I'm not going to do this, but if I brought somebody up on Zoom and was like, come on, jump on Zoom, turn on your camera, what are the top 3 problems that you solve for your customers? You want to be able to rattle those off. And if you're not able to, you have an opportunity here because this makes a difference between a really strong business and a business that has trouble as far as sustainability. Because when you don't know who your customer, your marketing cannot be as targeted. When you don't know who your customer is, it's hard to know if they can afford your services. When you don't know your customer, it's hard for you to do those combinations like I talked about, bundling, offering different things. And it's hard to kind of move people through a process where they can turn into repeat customers. All right. So think about that. Now, focus group sounds real fancy, but focus group just means you get on the phone with them. So if you're not sure, and for some of you, you're like, Steph, I'm new business. I'm not sure. You get on with potential customers. You have a social media account. Ask people if they're willing to jump on a Zoom call, 10 people, and you want to talk about a new service that you're offering and you want to get their feedback. If people have already gone through your program, ask people if they'd be willing to jump on a call with you and talk about their experience. You can do Facebook Live calls. You can do live calls in Facebook groups. If you have a Facebook group, same thing. You've been offering a free service and you're going to offer a paid one. You can do a session and say, hey, I want to get some feedback. All you're trying to do is create an opportunity so that customers and potential customers can tell you what they're thinking, what their problems are, what their issues are, so that you can make sure your products and services are aligned. How many people have done this before? Has anyone done like a little, I call it a focus group, but have you done this where you've really pulsed your customers? And I don't mean like a survey. I mean, oh, nice, Sam. Spending time with them, talking with them, interacting. And sometimes it's being a little bit in this uncomfortable space because you may have to say, well, I was thinking of doing this. And then people are like, that's not what I need. And that's okay. I'd rather someone tell you that that's not what they're looking for and give you better clarification so that when you do roll out the right product and service, you're in the right space. Okay. All right. Last one on the list. And then we're going to jump into Zoom and I'm going to answer any other questions. Customer pipeline. This really should have been my number 1. Oh my goodness. My numbers are all over the place. Number 4 is probably, it must be my favorite number today. Because I got 3 4s. Sorry about that. This is definitely number 5. And the customer pipeline. Now, a lot of people don't have pipelines. And what I mean by that is if someone sends you a note, like say they're on your website and they go into your contact form and say, hey, I'm interested in your classes, interested in your product. Do you put them into like a little spreadsheet or something fancier called a client relationship management system? And just keep track of them and see if they sign up for anything. And if they don't, do you follow up periodically? And I don't mean follow up like, are you going to buy today? Here's a buy now link. I mean, follow up with them, especially if this is a person that truly has interest, not someone who just asks a technical question. Do you follow up with them and see if there's anything you can do for them? Do you follow up with them and let them know about new services that you have offering? Do you create a relationship with people who have interest in what you're doing, but maybe have not decided to sign up yet? Or people that are truly prospects. So say someone does a discovery call with you, or they ask you for a proposal, and maybe they didn't sign up. 1 month later, 2 months later, 3 months later, do you follow up? Even if it's 6 months later? Or do you just let that kind of dissipate? The reason I bring this up is for a lot of us, we're leaving not just revenue on the table, but we're leaving potential customers behind because we're always thinking about that next customer. We're thinking about, I got to do a social media post, I got to do an email post, that we forget people have shown us interest in different ways. And those people often may need a different nudge, talk, or follow up to actually drive potential profit. The other thing is also think about repeat customer, repeat business. One thing that you can do as an existing business is make sure that if you have a service or offering, you have a way for them to repeat. And often that will mean reimagining your services. And that means it's, if you have a course, create the part two or go from the beginner to intermediate to advanced. If someone buys one product, turn them into a subscription product. If someone's been a part of, maybe they purchased 3 of your courses, gone to 5 of your classes. If you're thinking about rolling out a membership program, go to people who've purchased your classes, purchased your programs, and so forth. Go to them and try to turn them into repeat customers with a slightly different offering. These are things that you can do that are not a lot of work. They don't require a whole new page on your website. They don't require a whole new sales process. Often it's reaching out to existing customers to see if they need more help, because a coaching customer may just come back for another 3 months of coaching, or they may need that next level of support. And the question would be, if you had 4, 5, or 6 customers that were interested in next level support, would that be something you could offer? Because those individuals have already shown that they trust you. Most likely they've gotten a benefit from working with you, and they'll be more likely to move to that next step again. All right. So those are all my slides for today. That took a little longer than I expected. We got about 7 minutes left, so hopefully everyone can hang tight. If you're here listening on my live stream, what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump off for a little bit. I really, really appreciate everyone who joined us live. Anyone who has any questions live, if you have a question later on, please, please, please post it. I'll come back. I'm going to drop off the live stream here, but my folks in Zoom, hang tight, because I'm going to come over there and we're going to answer questions. I'm going to make sure that if you have a question about anything, I make sure I address it. All right. So see you later, everyone who's on our broadcast.